526-8000. Now, sit back, relax, good notes, and let's talk real estate.
And good morning to all our South Shore neighbors. You are listening to Talk Real Estate Roundtable. My name is Melissa Wallace, and Sharon McNamara is live and in studio with me this morning, getting us up on all of our social media. Be sure to follow Boston Connect Real Estate, Sharon Costa McNamara on Facebook and on Instagram. And we're on YouTube and LinkedIn. Yeah, what a beautiful day. I feel like this week has been a beautiful week. I love fall weather, so I'm good with this weather, this coldness, and I'm over the 80 degrees come the afternoon. But you know, fall's my jam. Everybody knows that. So, but today we are going to be continuing our discussion on home inspections and home inspections specifically in Massachusetts, because that's where we sell real estate. Hello, Sharon.
Good morning. Let me tell myself, maybe of course, I need to go stay. Morning. I didn't get up until 7:30. Can you believe it? And still short and got here on time.
I'm surprised.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you. But I didn't fall asleep till 5 o'clock, so it's surprising that.
I know. Well, you should have called me. And it's sort of interesting. I was like, we jinxed ourselves last week with that little hop in the shower song.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, you jumped in the shower. I'll be honest. I didn't shower this morning. I just finally I fell asleep. Got this terrible cough, but like no other symptoms and just a cough. And Ethan's like, well, you got to go to the doctor tomorrow. I'm like, so what? They can tell me you have a cough. You have to,
well, you could have something more. So you should just go to the doctor and get that behind you. So we're continuing our we were supposed to continue a couple weeks ago, but then we had topic after topic because we like to bring our listening audience something that may have happened during the week, and we bring it to them. So that's what ended up happening and sort of interrupted, but it worked out perfectly because we're going to continue to conversation regarding home inspections. And in particular, we had Massachusetts state law change. If you air a couple weeks ago, so you can listen to the full show if you want to know. The whole entire show was on the law, what we thought about it, but we can give a little synopsis of it. Home inspection and things that you should be thinking about and considering when you are having a home inspection.
Yeah.
So that's the plan for today. And then next week's show, you're going to love next week's show because as we get into Halloween coming up, right, you have a show that's going to be, what's the show?
Yeah, real estate nightmares. So things that we're calling it real estate nightmares. So I reached out to the agents in our it's the weekend before we all know and things don't go according to plan in the end. And so I thought of kind of some real estate narrative of, maybe during a transaction, before, after, during, and what we learned from that situation, and how we can avoid that happening again. So I reached out to our agents and I got a lot of feedback. So we have quite a show for next week. For privacy purposes, we're not going to be talking about specifics, addresses and names and anything like that, but just a general idea of something that happened in our everyday business that we probably weren't prepared for, but now moving forward, we are prepared for anything. And just sort of how we came over that, what we learned from it, and how we can move forward and make sure that these things don't happen again.
Yeah. So
most of the time it's out of our control. So
at the end, everybody gets a treat.
Yeah, everybody gets a treat.
Everybody gets a treat. So on to our topic today. I want to just again give a quick synopsis of what this new Massachusetts law is. And I've seen a lot of, different agents who, Ginny's on there. She's like, I have a few ghost stories. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you do. I actually have an actual ghost story, so I'll share that one next week. But I have a couple actually, so we can put a little of that hauntingness in or two to go on the theme. But so this week went into effect. Went into effect on Wednesday, October 15th. The first day that it was actually put in place was the next day, where everybody had to abide by this new law, and the new law is part of the Homes Act, Chapter 150, and what it basically says is that, maybe it's better to say how we got there, I guess. So the reason why they got to this law, I'm not going to say we, 'cause I'm not 100% convinced it's really going to help anybody, to be quite honest. But back, a few years ago, when people were trying to get an offer exted on a house, it would be, all right, the house is on the market for $500,000. I'm going to offer you cash. Then people are like, well, I don't have cash. I'm going to offer you 25, 50, sometimes over 100,000 over asking. So it just became this battle of how can I make my offer look better and better and better to the seller. So my offer, one of 23, 24, sometimes more offers, will get looked at and excite the seller enough to accept the offer. If I don't have cash, if I don't have more money to keep on continuously putting down, this new trend started with, oh, well, I'll waive my home inspection.
Hmm.
So sellers, of course, really liked that. Let's waive the home inspection. They don't have to worry about any type of renegotiation or concerns that are going to come up after the fact if they should. Okay. So that became a trend. Well, then what ended up happening is people started feeling, again, according to, I don't know who, I don't know who these people were, because this is how it made it to its way to the state house. And somehow, Governor Haley felt that this is the need to change this, because she said people felt, so they must have gone to her, if I don't waive my home inspection, I'm not going to get my offer accepted. We know that that's not true. I mean, would you have a better chance? Possibly, I guess. But in our office, we were already had a rule established. If you were waiving your home inspection, we were going to make you sign a waiver that basically said
Hmm.
this was your idea, not our idea, which actually is a form in the Massachusetts Association of Realtors laws, and I think it's 523. I think is that waiver. That new one that
Yep, it should be
is
on
in there.
your, yep.
Um, or 501
I think
maybe.
it's 502.
501. This one.
Nope. 50
Oh, 523.
523.
Yeah,
Yep.
I was right. So this is always been there. Didn't know that. I was talking to the Mar attorneys this week, because I had another question that you prompted for me. And so this form 523 has always been there. So we could have actually just used this form and said, okay, if you don't want to have a home inspection, that's fine. But this is as you chose to, not us.
Hmm.
So now the state is saying, no more. We want everybody to feel as if they are on a fair playing field when it comes to having an offer, decided upon by the seller. So this new law basically says that you can still waive your home inspection if you want to, but the seller will never know. So you can't do that prior to the offer to purchase is put in place. So you can't, and even during the contract in our offer to purchase now, there's still places to put things in there, but you can't say I'm waiving my home inspection.
Hmm. Yeah, so the seller won't know until after the offer is accepted. And there's two scenarios. So you're in the offer, you write down a reasonable time frame. So everybody has a different opinion on what is reasonable. And we talked about this in one of the classes that we took, of what is reasonable to one person and reasonable to another.
Do you know what's funny? How, like, the little attorneys came up with that word, and you know how they probably answer it? It
It
depends.
depends, yeah. Is that reasonable to you? Well, no, it's not reasonable to everybody, but, yeah, so in the offer, you give you're supposed to give a reasonable amount of time instead of just crossing it out or saying waived, like, a lot of agents were doing before, this, went into effect this week, so you have to put this time frame, and then, you have that time frame after the offer is accepted to let the, um listing agent and the seller know that the buyer is going to do a home inspection. If they choose to not do a home inspection during that time period, they have the remainder of the time period to change their mind unless they sign this waiver saying,
Mm,
okay, we understand that we might have, I don't know, a 5 day or 7 day time frame period. It's day three. We've decided definitely that we do not want to have one. Then they sign this waiver saying
yeah.
that, we relinquish all
Mhm.
sort of.
So the way that it will work is conflicting ideas of how to do it. I guess it's when I say conflicting doesn't mean that either one of them is wrong. It's just that this has to be in prior to that it says right on here. So to Massachusetts Regulation 76 760 CMI, the rental home waivers, this one must be signed by buyer to the seller prior to signing the first written contract to purchase residential property in Massachusetts. And there are some, exclusions to this rule as well. None that probably any of us are going to really deal with on this show, right? So, because we deal with mostly residential, it does, in a way, affect new construction, and I can talk about that in a minute. So, the way this works, so if you're currently on the market and you are a seller, hopefully, and chances are that your agent has already come to you to let you know about this Massachusetts mandatory being the key word there, residential home inspection disclosure. So we told our office that every one of them had to go to their sellers and have this document signed that basically says that the seller agrees that the seller agrees and represents that this agreement to purchase is not it shall not be contingent upon waiver, limitation, or a restriction of a buyer's choice to obtain a home inspection in the whole or in its parts. So it's basically saying agreement. Then the buyer also acknowledges that they may choose to have the premises inspected by a licensed home inspector of the buyer's choice and acknowledges that disclosure has been provided to the buyers. So the seller should sign this first. This is the easiest way. It can come with the offer, by the way. So if the seller doesn't have one already signed by some chance, the buyer can have their buyer's agent just have one of these signed, and then the seller is going to have to sign it, but it should be prior to them, when
Mhm.
reviewing the offer. So the way that we're going to handle it in our office is when we are filling out the listing agreement form, we're also going to fill in this, and then we will attach this to MLS.
Yes. So it's just saying that the seller acknowledges that a buyer has a right to a home inspection, and then the buyer is saying, "Yes, I acknowledge that I have a right to a home inspection." That's not saying I'm waiving it or I'm actually doing one. It says that they have the right to do one.
The part I don't like about this is that the seller's agent has to sign it.
Yeah.
And I'm just not a big fan of me having to sign any type of document other than the one that is in relationship with me and the agreement. But agent has to acknowledge, the seller
Yeah.
agent acknowledges that each seller has been informed that the seller's obligation under this law,
Mhm.
and further that this disclosure has been provided to each seller and buyer.
Yeah. I think it just really is, a checkpoint to make sure that the listing agent is having that conversation with their seller saying, you know, "We no longer can ask upfront, 'Are you doing a home inspection to your home?'" Those conversations aren't going to happen anymore.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of fact, "Hey, a buyer has the right to, um, perform a home inspection." The listing agent signs it because they've had that conversation with their seller that we won't know. I mean,
Mhm.
a listing agent has to have this conversation now of we won't know until you accept an offer.
The seller agent hereby acknowledges that each seller has been informed of the seller's obligation under this law. Okay, I can
Mhm.
do that because I work directly with the seller. So I'm going to give this to them at the time of the listing agreement. And again, when I have as with a contract right now to list their home, I gave it to them. And further acknowledges that this disclosure has been provided to each seller and buyer. That isn't like, how can you make me perform on someone I'm not even attached to?
Yeah, well,
Well,
especially
that's why
because
we should
you
attach it to MLS because now we've given the buyers the opportunity to grab this with their buyer's agent.
well, I would ask maybe the, our attorney if the listing agent because of that verbiage, the listing agent can sign it after it's if they've had the conversation with the buyer until you've
Yeah,
gotten the form back.
yeah, mhm,
Um, so I would be curious
yeah,
to see if there could be a delay in the listing agent signing that.
yeah. Good point. See, this is how these things go all the time. So that's what the law is. So again, in a little bit of a nutshell and to wrap this all up, the law is when the law went into effect. So actually said the 16th is when you had to make those changes and adjustments to everything. You did in my opinion, but you so you just and for sellers, just so you know, timelines are still negotiable. If somebody comes to you and says, I want 20 days to decide if I'm going to have a home inspection and to do the home inspection, well, I think that we could all say that that does not seem fair and reasonable
Yeah.
to the seller, right? Well, I'm
Yeah.
going on vacation or I'm doing this. It doesn't matter. Like, sorry, it just when you come back from vacation, the offer, right?
Yeah, so that can be negotiated. It doesn't mean that you can't negotiate aspects of it,
Mhm.
but you just can't negotiate whether or not you're going to waive it beforehand. So you can negotiate the time frame. In our class, we talked about, okay, well, what if somebody puts in an offer and the time frame is 1 day? You're obviously gonna know that
Mhm.
they're intending to waive it. And the person running the class said, "Do you think that 1 day isn't a reasonable amount of time?" It has to be a reasonable amount of
Mhm.
time. So, and then somebody, I think maybe you or somebody said not during class, but afterwards, like, "Well, I can get my home inspector there within a day, and then we can get the report." And I'm like, "But
Mm.
can you make that decision about things need to be repaired, things like that?" So,
Yeah, I don't think I said that, but, I don't
I
remember
think
saying that.
maybe it was somebody in our office that said like, "Oh, well, my home inspector's, great, and I can get them up there and." And I'm like, "Okay, well, what about your client? Can they go to a home inspection?
Mhm.
They probably have a job
Yeah,
in order
make the
to inform
appointment,
a
get
make an
to
appointment."
do it,
Yeah, make
and
it
get all information back.
yeah,
Yeah, it
and what
doesn't
if they
seem
need,
reasonable.
somebody to come out and do another, inspection? And plus, what if you're doing, a radon inspection? You don't get that
Mhm.
back in 24 hours,
Yeah. Well,
so
they can make that all contingent upon the purchase and sales, but this doesn't have anything to do with radon and all that. So,
mhm.
that's even completely separate, just the home inspection aspect of it. So, the radon, lead paint, and all that still falls somewhere within here that they have the, opportunity to do that. But, um, I think when we're talking about that reasonable, I think that that's where the loopholes are gonna become, right? So now somebody's gonna say, "Okay, you have this." I'm gonna call it an option period because that's what they call it in Texas. Because 'cause I've been brought up on all that language and lingo. That option time for you to have that home inspection. I think that sellers, if you have multiple offers, I think that they're gonna look, all right, well, this person's going to do it in 3 days. So it's Tuesday. They're going to let me know by Friday. Then I won't miss a weekend. I mean, that's where my mindset would go, right? Like, all right, I'm not going to miss a weekend of home inspection. I mean, open houses and things, right?
Mhm.
Where somebody else might say 5 days. Just so you know, all of this can still be negotiated. If you're a seller, this new mandatory, disclosure is not tying your hands. Just because somebody is having a home inspection doesn't mean the furnace isn't working. That was something. I mean, yeah, but it isn't working properly. Could you have it maintained? The seller
Mhm.
can say no.
Yeah.
I mean, you still have opportunities to negotiate back and forth. So as a seller, your hands are not tied that oh, I have to let them have a home inspection, and anything and everything that comes up, they're just going to look for things to come up so they can negotiate. And no, that isn't true. I mean, they may still come up with a lot of things, but if they come up and say, all right, the roof needs to be replaced, you still don't have to do anything.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything, and I think as a buyer and a buyer's agent, you also have to be aware of the property that you are putting an offer in on. So what's the situation there?
Hmm.
Is this a house that, was sold by, the seller's children or an estate because, somebody unfortunately has passed away and they just don't have the money to do
Yeah.
it?
Hmm.
So just be aware of, maybe the reasoning of selling. And there's just some situations where people are just like, no, like
Hmm.
it sort of
And
is
and
what it is.
and
So,
buyers can still say they don't wanna
and
have
buyers can
this.
still sell.
I don't after the fact, they can say, "You know what? I actually am waiving my right to have the home inspection. I appreciate that you're giving me the opportunity, but I'm gonna fill out this form, 523 here with MAR that basically says that understand that I had the opportunity to do a home inspection, but I'm waiving that right." And the buyer understands that the results of terminating the buyer's inspection contingent agency, the buyer will likely have no recourse of a piece of it for me to sort of be interested in because, as you know, I work with Stonebridge Homes. We have two developments with Stonebridge Homes. We've done several of development with them as their marketing and sales advisors, and we have two with them right this. Okay, you have the right to have a home inspection, and Stonebridge Homes has been great about it. If somebody wants to have one, they certainly can, but it can't be used to get out of the contract. And
Mhm.
the reason for that is because when somebody is building a home in these semi custom homes, they could pick pink tile and they could pick blue vanity to go with it,
Mhm.
with a green countertop. Like it's their home, they're building it, and they're making it their own, but we can't own it after the fact, right? Ourselves. So you can, so the way that it works in new construction is if you don't need this waiver, with construction, especially like the ones we're doing, I want this lot and I'm going to do this style of a home. I want this lot and this is the style of the townhouse I'm going to do. So long as, but if the house is, so that's from ground up. If it's and it's, just, inside is just studded, that's still you don't need the home inspection waiver. The point that we need the home inspection waiver with new construction is when the house is substantially built, meaning somebody could move in.
Mhm.
You could live in this house in the capacity of what it is right now. So that would be all my model homes.
Yeah.
So I brought this up to Bridge Homes this week when we got a recommendation and said, well, this is something we are going to have to put in place for our model units because it is substantially completed.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's a
No,
oh,
no.
oh, you're pointing at me. What's going on?
Alright.
Yeah. So that's when you need to do that. So yeah, you have the right to do it. So that with the new construction, maybe you're going to choose not to do it, but just so you know, you have the opportunity to do it. However, it doesn't mean that this is going to allow you. They'll still have in place because it's new construction. Well, I guess you could get out of it after home inspection if you chose to, because we built it and they chose their finishes in it. So
Yeah.
that's where we are.
We have a comment in the group said,
Yep.
they are making sure doing our job. It's just a way to reiterate they have the right to have an inspection.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, Amy? It's such a good, valid point is that, how do we get to these places? Because somebody was giving somebody wrong advice, and that's just the way it is. As you know, I sit on the MAR, the MAR board for grievance, and things that we hear and agents who aren't doing the right thing. It's really sad to do it, but again, in our office, I didn't even know about this Form 523. We had our own created by an attorney that
Yeah.
basically said, "Okay, if you're choosing not to do a home inspection, that is your choice.
Yeah.
However, it is not our recommendation." So,
Yeah.
and I just heard our telephone ringing. Who do we have with
Yes, you
us?
did. Ding ding. It's our buddy Jay in Plymouth.
Hello, Jay in Plymouth.
Hello, Jay in Plymouth.
Well, good morning, ladies. It's been a while,
Where you
but
been all
listen.
summer, my friend?
Oh, it's been a beautiful summer.
Yes, it
Mhm.
has.
Hey, here's my thought.
Okay.
As a seller, let's just say I'm selling my house for $500,000, and with this new law or rules with the home
Well,
inspection.
so just law, yep.
Okay. Like it's early in the morning,
No,
I'm
no, no,
still
no.
waking up. Uh,
It is confusing though, because last year I spoke about a new regulation that happened with NAR, which is National Association of Realtors, like that. You know,
that's
I can be a real estate agent without being a realtor. That's part of the association. Whatever they told me to do, I didn't have to do if I left the association. This is a state law, so that's the only reason why I said that. Go ahead.
well. Thank you for the clarity.
Mhm.
So, what could stop me as a seller in on a legal premise? Could I state with an additional form that the buyer would have to sign um, regarding any reflecting or finding on the home inspection, or entertain reducing the price on any findings of the home inspection? Could I do that as a seller?
Well, I don't know that you could allow me to provide. Let me see the here. This is on the offer part of it. Let me just read this real quick. I mean, you can say whatever you want. You can say that the house is as is if you want to. You don't have to do anything after the fact. And so if they come to you after the fact, after they do a home, I don't stop them from having an election. You're
Mhm.
giving them the right to do a home inspection. So I guess we could always say, yeah, you have the right to do a home inspection, but we're not going to do anything. But I think that that's just sort of finding maybe a loophole in this law.
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
so I'm not trying to be deceptive,
No, no.
but like my idea, I'm gonna sell my home next year. I think it's that valued at, I'm just saying, 500,000. This is all an example. And but regardless of what your home, if you decide to do a home inspection regarding to this buyer, my thought process is that I'm still stuck on. I just want to sell my house for what I feel it's worth.
Hmm.
So whatever your home inspection finds, I'm not going to entertain bargaining or lowering my price. Does that make? Is
It
that
makes
am I
perfect
more
sense.
clear on that?
mhm.
So we had a lot what ended up happening too, what we saw a lot of was my buyer client is gonna have a home inspection for informational purposes only, which was basically trying to tell the seller, just so you know, yes, we wanna have a home inspection because a home inspection is really important. A home inspection isn't really, I mean, it is and it isn't, but the key focus should not be, oh, it's for me to find things wrong so I can go back and renegotiate with the seller. It is about finding things that potentially are wrong, and maybe the seller doesn't even know about it. I had a situation come up,
Yeah.
right? Just last week, didn't know about something, but as soon as we found out, it was repaired, right? Nothing major. But it doesn't mean that you have to negotiate anything after the fact. You do not have to do anything.
Yeah, and also a home inspection, we've said this,
Oh,
several
yeah.
times, is also an educational tool. So it's a moment for these buyers, especially first time home buyers that have never deal with a heating system on their own or anything like that. It's know where the water shut off is education by that home inspector. So you're walking through the house with somebody who's educated in this field to say, okay, this is where, your spigot shut off is. This is where your, water to the whole house, is shut off is, this is the type of heating system you have. So things like that, which are very important for people because a lot of the times, if you don't have that education, at the day after closing, you have no idea what you're doing.
Mhm.
It's not just about owning a home.
That-
It's knowing how to use these mechanicals.
exactly. And also, I mean, go back to the home inspection, and I totally agree with what you're stating. Um, Very informational. I mean, for instance, my house, I learned after the fact that the house had a flooding problem.
Mm.
Mhm.
And so I had to figure out ways and I had to fix that flooding problem. And that's good to know. But I think human nature, people, some people will probably use that home inspection as okay, well, you need a new roof on the house. I want a new roof, even though the roof could go for another 5 years or whatever,
Mhm.
as an example.
Yeah.
But that would be in some cases. But I think in my case, I would be like, okay, if you do a home inspection, there's more things that you don't want to deal with as a homeowner, then I'll give you the opportunity to opt out of the sale.
Yes, and
That would just
that's yeah.
that
You will
that would
have
be
that's
me.
exactly what it is, yeah. So in here too, it says, now on the offer, it says, "If the results are not satisfactory to the buyer, choose one in buyer's sole discretion." So the buyer can decide if you don't go forward or not, right? "Hey, the roof only has 5 years left on it. I don't feel comfortable with that. The seller is not willing to negotiate with me, so I'm gonna choose to opt out." The other one is, and so if the latter to the choose one and the estimated aggregate
Mm.
cost of repairs exceeds X amount as indicated. So you could say if it's over $5,000 as indicated in writing by a consultant regularly in the business of providing such repairs, remediations, or improvements, the buyer shall have the right to give written notice received by the seller or the seller's agent by 5 p.m. on the calendar day after the date set forth. So basically saying if any repairs go over this here is saying the buyer. Now again, this should probably have the word reasonable somewhere to
Mhm.
all the attorneys that create these forms, because what if somebody puts in there, all right, if any of the repairs exceed $300,000, I'm not
Yeah,
going forward.
$1,000,000 and it's a $500,000 house.
Yeah.
Well, that's why
Right.
that's why I wanted to point, that section out to you, Sharon, is because you actually just sort of used that in one of your listings of so in the offer, not only are you not indicating if you're having a home inspection, but you're giving that time frame like we talked about, but you can also give a monetary value. So
Mhm.
anything that exceeds this. So I feel like that part would cover what you're talking about, Jay, of, a
Yep.
buyer coming in and saying like anything we accept anything that is
Mhm.
under $10,000. We'll use $10,000 as the
Yeah, that's
threshold
the
here.
Right.
offer I just got was said
And
10,000.
anything over, then we can, start a conversation about it. And you can say yes or no to that, or you can again negotiate that too. But in a case that Sharon just had on one of her listings is, she went back and said, they had a home inspection, said, oh, a couple things came up, and she said, okay, well, you put a $10,000 threshold in there.
Yeah.
Those items don't come up to $10,000.
Mhm.
But in good faith and good value,
We still
we
negotiated.
still negotiated it, and we're closing soon. So
And, and it worked out.
it
Yeah.
worked out. Yeah.
And that's one thing too, Jay, that when we're talking, and I think this is where I feel like this is where the professional real estate agents are going to actually sort of outshine the ones that maybe don't even know about this or don't really understand. This is what I'm hoping doesn't happen. And I know my friend Amy Troop, who is also an agent, is listening in or watching wherever she is, right? So she's been in this business a long time too. We've seen all the changes, rules, and all this other stuff. We've also seen the deceit that can go on behind the scenes, which is unfortunate. But I hope
Yep.
that it doesn't become one of those things where real estate agents are not paying attention right now to what this is. And my hope is that they're listening to this show, your question right now, because I don't want a seller to think just because they are giving the buyer the right and the opportunity to conduct a home inspection, it does not mean that the seller is
going to negotiate after the
Yeah, it
fact.
doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean that
Right.
the seller has to do
Mhm.
anything afterwards. And I don't know, I just had a vision of like when Casey's dog comes over and like tries to cool down and
That's
like you
good.
just have to let them take care, you have to no, you
Yeah.
want to. So I
Yeah.
hope real estate agents are not saying that to their clients like, well, yeah, if something comes up, you have to take care of it. No, that's
No.
not true.
You know, and you never had to. I mean, there, you
Yeah.
can negotiate on both sides. A seller can walk away from a deal too, and I think it's important to state that. Um, I think that there is a misconception sometimes of one side against the other, where it's not, because
Mm-mm.
you have a seller wanting to sell and a buyer wanting to buy, and when you come together, we're
Mhm.
all working together to a common goal. So it doesn't have to be
Mhm.
like this big negotiation or this big battle. Like we all have a common goal, and that make everybody
Mhm.
is at peace with
What the
what
decision is.
happens at the end of the
We're
day.
gonna bump into each other at Roach Brothers, all right? I'm not ducking in the produce aisle because somebody felt they got screwed by one of my clients, or So
Well, the only time is when you don't understand and you don't.
exactly.
You
Yeah,
have to understand and know everything before you sign on the dotted line. Because once you
Absolutely.
sign,
that's a great
you
point,
own it.
Jay.
Yeah.
And one other quick question is, what is, if you happen to know this, what would the average turnaround of a home inspection from it being performed and it being written out?
So
Mhm.
this is the word that they're giving us, Jay. Hold on.
Yeah.
Reasonable.
Reasonable.
So
Yeah.
again, this
Okay.
brings it back to buyer and seller. So again, a seller, a buyer could put together an offer and the offer could say, I want 20. That's your offer. That's great that you have the right to have one. You're asking for 20 days. I can talk to
Right.
you as my seller and you're like, I will say to you, that doesn't seem very reasonable to me. Okay.
Yeah,
Like,
Right.
that
right.
doesn't seem
So
very
it
reasonable.
doesn't
Yeah.
seem reasonable. What would a reasonable amount of time be? I guess 4 days,
I
5 days, 7 days. Like it really depends.
Yeah,
Okay.
This is where the negotiation comes in for buyer and seller.
I would say I'm gonna use the word common. I would
Yeah, I
say
like that.
before this, it was common to see in offers of those that were not waiving their home inspection to be 7 to 10 days
Yes.
from the
Mhm.
signed, offer.
Okay.
So it was the 7 to 10, like, threshold day. You know, a lot of home inspectors were able to get out there before that time, but you had that time frame of the 7 to 10 days to schedule a home at home and get your report back. Go back. You have that time frame to say, hey, I would love to have a plumber out there. They say yes, and then
Exactly.
you can get though that is a reasonable, I feel like,
Yeah.
time frame of getting these people, these hardworking people out there
Yeah.
to to
It's not easy to sometimes get the
it's not
20 days.
very busy.
Well, with the home inspection, we commonly used to see 10 days and then it got changed to seeing more 7 days, right? And that
Right.
was that we would always say to our buyer clients, our suggestion is that you have your home inspection sooner than later. That way there, like don't wait until day
Hmm.
6 to have your home inspection because now
Yeah.
you don't have much time if something is wrong with the plumbing or something is wrong with the electrical or the roof. Mold, right? To have a mold inspector in. I was with
Yep.
Jake this week, right? Jake Turner. You don't have time to get those people in. However, you can do an extension of
Yeah.
time, right? So if we get to day 6, you have your home inspection, you only have until day 7, and then it's 24 hours afterwards, the next day by 5 o'clock the next day. You don't have enough time to bring people in. You can request an extension. It doesn't mean that the seller will say yes. You're taking a risk as a buyer at that point because I'll let you know right now, everybody knows I am a very strong listing agent. I work with buyers. I'm a good buyer's agent because I'm such a strong listing agent,
Hmm.
right?
You
But
set
I'm
the expectation.
exactly. So here's the if you are going to wait that long to have a home inspection, guess what? I'm still marketing and promoting this house and I'm still having people come through that house as a backup.
Hmm.
Because if
Yeah.
we get to day 6 and you decide that you want, don't take the chance buyers that I'm not going to have somebody else that's a backup that potentially is a better offer than yours already.
Well, especially if you had multiple offers to begin
Yes.
with.
Yes, so don't play around with the timeline just because you think "Oh, I'm gonna get the best of
Yeah.
somebody." I hate that mentality.
Yeah.
But the other
Exactly.
right? The other thing that I think is really important too is back to your original question, Jay, and thank you for bringing this up and always being such a great part of our show, is
Yeah,
y
I'm a overthinker.
We
Yeah,
love
I
that.
know. Well, oh my gosh, I am if we ever sat next to each other at a bar, I think our significant others would
They would
both leave.
leave yeah, they'd leave you there.
Would be there the
Worst
next
case
morning asking for
scenario.
coffee, right? Yeah, but then,
Yep.
the other thing is too is you don't have to accept an offer like, because you're saying, I'm going to tell them like, hey, I'm not doing anything after the fact. You
Mhm.
can have your home inspection, but I'm not doing anything. One of the things that I always say, whether it's now, it was 24 years ago when I started, the house is priced according to the condition it is in. So if somebody says to me, "Oh, the roof has 5 years left in it," like you as the example you gave me, Jay, well, my
Yep.
response is going to be, "The house is priced according to the condition that the house is in."
And she used that line on me when I bought her list that I needed a new roof. I said, "How old's the roof?" She goes, "If the house is priced to the condition that it's in." I said, "Oh, you're playing that with me too." Yeah, you're playing
Well,
that
I'm
with
Well, a
sorry.
me.
legitimate.
My
Listen,
fiduciary
I
responsibility.
It's okay, I still went over.
I may think my house is worth 500,000 because you know how
Yeah.
human nature is.
No one has an ugly
But
baby.
you, but you, but you can go. I'm sorry that your roof less than 5 years that needs to be replaced, and then you have this and that, and I can't. And a real legitimate real estate people, such as you guys,
Mhm.
you're not going to say, "Oh, well, yeah, we'll put it on for 500." You guys are going to actually, with your expertise, you're
Mhm.
going to say, you're going to give the true facts. No, your house is not worth 500.
And
You know,
here's one of the things I might say to you, Jay, is a house is worth what somebody is willing to pay for it. When I sit down with people, the majority of the time I spend with them is on the numbers. Okay. I bring you directly into MLS. I'm showing you like styled homes and like styled neighborhoods. Okay. I'm going through all these numbers. I ask people when we start, like, how much time do you have for this conversation that we're going to have today? Because I am going to focus on numbers and data and I can get into the fluff. I think my track record of selling over 700 homes in my career shows not don't and if someone says I've been in the business 24 years, that doesn't mean anything. I could be in the
Mhm.
business for
correct.
24 years and sold 5 houses my entire life, right? My entire
Mhm.
career.
Yep.
I've sold over 700 homes and I think it was like 770 or something. I don't even remember because I don't pay attention
That's
to
very impressive, and congratulations.
well, thank you, and
That's
I
very
don't
good.
say it to I really don't judge my success by my numbers. I don't gauge success by numbers. I gauge my success by how happy my clients are, but I have a lot of experience is what my point is here, right? So, I sort of got off track there for whatever reason I did. What were we saying something. Anyways, that was my thought is what I would say to you as a professional as we're going through it, I say, "Oh, I don't care about the fluff, like marketing, the advertising, the promoting, what I do on social media, what I do for print flags, what I do for sites. I don't get into a lot of that. I know how to do all that. What I do concentrate on is what is the value of the house. So Jay, I'm sitting with you looking at all these comparables and you have a roof next years. I pull up the comps. Every one of them discloses brand new roof this year, brand new roof last year, brand new roof 2 years ago. I'm going to say to you, hey, listen, we can still attempt this price, maybe, right? Good in Massachusetts. Now, if we were down Florida, or if we were out in Texas, it would be a completely different. But I still we can test it a little bit. Which the market is willing to pay that amount for the house. That's great. I want you to be very aware that after they do a home inspection, they may come back and say, we're reviewing the comps again, and as much as we are willing to pay this price or over, we're not letting your roof only has a couple years left. So we're going to ask you for money back. I'm already preparing them. My job as a listing agent is to get, but I'm
So
also
we
warning
all
you.
need to
Hmm?
Go ahead. No.
telling you, "Hey, these are the things that aren't perfect about your house, so don't you should be ready to negotiate."
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So, and then shipping them, that's great comps I'm looking at, and they're
Mhm.
gonna say, "You know what? Maybe you are at $500 because heavily new kins and different and new hardwood floors. I'm gonna give up 78."
Yeah, that
Correct.
hasn't
Boy,
changed.
Jay, you just got me all fired up there,
Mm.
boy.
So I know it's early in the morning too, but as I said, I'm an overthinker, so I'm thinking about every scenario. But
Yeah.
one other thing, when I inspectors, and I find that very curious. is a- They're a major tool if
Mm,
you're going to use one to
mhm,
buy a home, and that goes to my next quick question: is that who I know with me, my real estate agent found the home inspector for me. But
mhm.
I think with this new law, I think that you guys got be certain on good, well, prepared if that's what you plan on doing when you
Yes.
buy a home.
100%. That's why we say if you're gonna give yourself 7 to 10 days, do it sooner than later with your home inspector because home inspectors, they are great at many things, but they're not the expert on all. So, if they come up with something about the plumbing, you have the time to bring in a licensed plumber, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah,
Electrician.
electrician. So we know the ones that are sucky, right? Like we do. As
Yeah,
a listing agent, when we see them, I'm like, oh, I feel bad for the buyer that they chose this one, but here we go. But and sometimes,
Exactly.
and oh, did they really choose this one? So now I already know that I'm going to have these conversations, and we're going to have to negotiate because chances. And here's the other thing too: after a home inspection is done, you as the seller can bring in people. So, I mean, it's happened to me recently where some mold was found. Hey, listen, if you're not crawling around up in your attic, chances are
how do you know?
you're
Yeah.
never gonna know that, right? And the
Exactly.
general homeowner doesn't even know what to look for. Like, first of all,
Sucks.
tell me I'm like a weather stick when it comes to mold. But when so say mold is found, a home inspector, you can't call mold until it's actually tested, by the way. But
Yep.
my recommendation to my client was, "Listen, you don't want mold hair anyways. I have the best in the industry. His name is Jake Turner from Turner Environmental. He is wonderful. He'll come out. He gives what I love about him is he's given a true assessment. He's like, no, by the way, that isn't mold. You know what that is? That is actually pest um, urine.
Droppings?
Yeah,
Oh,
pest droppings in urine.
oh,
It's not mold." So, like, he'll
interesting.
tell you the truth. But as a seller, you can also say, "Hey, you know what? We had a plumber come in, and the plumber said, actually, that isn't a problem." Or we had the mold guy come in, and he said that isn't the problem. So you have the right to actually have people back in your house too.
Mhm.
My friend Jennifer Goodman, who lives in Austin, Texas. So if any of you are thinking about moving to the Austin area, Jennifer Goodman is the person that I would choose to help me buy a house in that area. So if you're thinking about moving there too, you can also reach out to me and I can connect you to Jennifer as well. If you have anybody that's going to be going to university or anything out there and you need some help, you can reach out to me and I will introduce you to Jennifer. But she says, regarding all of this stuff. As is still negotiable after getting results from an inspection in Texas, as the offer is put in disclosed on the required seller disclosure. So they have a seller disclosure that has
Mhm.
to be is required. I don't make my sellers do seller disclosures here because the reason I like them is we used to have to sign them as agents. And I was like, I don't know this person.
Yeah,
Like,
we
I don't
don't
know if
know
they're
yeah,
lying.
we don't know if all
Right.
this
So that's
information
putting
is true.
you on the hook.
Yeah, and not only that, it potentially puts you on the hook, Jay. That's how I feel because you could say, "Oh yeah, one time I did have some water seeping through my bulkhead. Does that constitute water in the basement? I don't know. You left the bulkhead door open." Like, you know what I mean? But what
Right.
about the thing that you love?
Yeah.
Like, oh my, I absolutely completely forgot that 15 years ago, the diverter in my tub on the first floor broke and some water seeped down below. Oh, okay. Well, not you to do, but maybe there's mold there now, right?
Yeah,
So I
but
don't like them.
and maybe even to go off of that of like, at what point? Oh, the phone's ringing.
Mhm.
At what point do you stop going backward? Like, okay, 15 years ago this
Yeah.
happened, but the issue has been resolved. Do you still have to disclose
Mm,
like that?
yeah.
But also, I just want to say Jennifer Goodman also said reasonable is not a definitive term, subjective. So Ontario struck that language 10 plus years ago as a result.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Jennifer? Sometimes it takes time for Massachusetts to catch up. So, but it's such a good point. I think
Slow to
it's
go.
what does reasonable mean? Well, that depends,
Yeah.
right? Oh yeah, we
Yeah.
only have 2 minutes.
Well,
Jay,
I guess
any
that
final
means
thoughts?
okay. I just want to say thank you very much, and you clarified my overthinking, and I'm good for the day.
We love
Good for the
that.
weekend.
Well, thanks so much, Jay. And if I ever, well, I don't know what you look like, but if you ever hear my voice sitting at a bar somewhere having dinner with my husband, chances are we should not sit next to each other because
Yeah.
our significant
Run
others
the opposite way.
our significant others would leave the overthinkers to ourselves. So, well, have a great weekend and tune in next week too, because we're going to be talking about scary
Real estate nightmares.
real estate nightmares next week. So, thanks, Jay.
Okay, sounds good to me.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Jay. Have a
you.
great weekend.
Bye.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is such a great topic. I'm glad that we brought it up again. Again, if you're just tuning in and we're just ending, please listen to this show again. You can find all of our past shows on any of your podcast apps. Just go to Talk Real Estate Roundtable and you'll be able to find us. You can also go to talkrealestateroundtable.com and you will find us, or you can go to Boston Connect TV, Boston Connect Real Estate. Go to our channel on YouTube and you'll find everywhere on that.
We're everywhere.
So the law, it's official. People, it is official. The new law in Massachusetts for home inspection has come through. It was October 15th, Massachusetts mandatory resident home inspection disclosure. A couple of things real quick. I will be doing a open house tomorrow from 10 to 12 at 234 Forest Street in Pembroke. That is a 4-bedroom colonial with a 1-bedroom in-law ADU. So if you're looking for something maybe for an in-law or a family member, or if you want to rent it, you can do that as well. And we will be there again tomorrow, 10 to 12.
Yes.
You can always find all the open houses for Stonebridge Homes with us, Cushing Trails and Cochise Estates every Saturday, Cushing, and Sunday, 10 to 12, and at Cochise every Saturday and Sunday, 10 to 2.
Yes. Thank you so much for listening, everybody.
Oh,
And
I made a mistake. This week we're
this
11
week
to
we're
1.
11 to 1.
We're 11 to 1 at Cushing. We're trying something new. So Saturday, 11 to 1 at Cushing Trails in Hanson. Have a good weekend,
Thank
everybody.
you, everyone. Bye, Tim.
Bye. Bye, Tim. Have a good weekend.
The South Shore's first choice for